Hello, everyone. This is Mike Ronchetti, and I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us today. My guest is also a dad, a husband, an educator, and an expert in industrial controls, electrical systems, and energy uses. And also, he's into scouting, which is cool. It's my pleasure to welcome John to the show today. Hi, John.
Hello, Mike. How are you, sir?
Very, very good. It's going to be a great conversation. Looking forward to hearing all about your company. Let's begin. Let's start with an introduction of yourself. Introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your personal story, where you're born, where you're from, your family, some hobbies, and then, of course, if you have a funny story or two of your family life, talk about it.
All right, cool. My name is John Piller, as you said. I am born and raised in northern Indiana in the South Bend, Mishawaka area. Um, and we went to school here. Met my wife at Purdue University, and we left off for about 10 years. I spent a little bit of time in Texas, and most of that time, my wife and I were in the Indianapolis area. So I spent a great deal of time in industry doing automation controls in a building automation systems, specifically jails. So that was an interesting piece. So one of the funny things is I was in and out of jail for 10 years, right? So that's a little too much. We got out every night. But after doing that, she and I decided to move back to the South Bend area and establish ourselves here. This is where family was at. And I ended up spending 7 years teaching with Purdue University. That's the educator there. So I was what did they call me? They called me I was an assistant professor. I was a professor of practice, so I didn't have to worry about tenure or any of this. So it was more about getting in the world and going out and doing things and bringing that back to the classroom. And so during that time period, that's when I had started JPiller Design and Consulting. So in the off seasons and in the times when professors aren't working, I was using my time as doing consulting with local local manufacturers and contractors around the northern Indiana, Michiana space. So did that for 7 years. In 2019, I had crossed paths with a SaaS company, a startup software as a service company, and they had a client that was my client. We kind of teamed together pretty well during that client time, and they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I went into the world of startup for a while, doing smart manufacturing, IoT, data collection. I was my path and tradition there was the old guy that knew where a Cat5 would go on something that didn't have Ethernet, right? So I was helping them collect data on the field and moving that towards running teams that were doing field installs. Went through a few iterations of that. And in December of 2023, I finally said, it's time to go full tilt on my own. And I got a building and got enough action to go ahead and do JPiller Design and Consulting full time. So now we have two wings. Three wings. The first wing is the automation controls and smart manufacturing that I was doing before. My partner that allowed me to kind of get off and go off on my own here has background of 40 years worth of packaging and aerosol in manufacturing. So not mixing the product, but getting the product and getting it packaged and getting it to the consumer. And so we have a small wing of doing some aerosol filling here. We can do some custom aerosol filling. So if you're under 75,000 units, we'll definitely do that for you and help you get that commercialized. And then the goal is that I will then help you build a machine or get you into a setup so that we can get my client's business to grow, right? I don't want to be their constant packer. I want to be their automation solutions provider. And then the third wing is also the education piece. So with what I've done before, we have some capabilities of doing some training, industrial automation training, electrical training, some pneumatics training, and things like that. So we bring folks in and we'll help educate some of their people. What we like to do is with the automation line, we like to get some of the clients' maintenance guys here. before we get the FAT test done, the factory acceptance test. We will do that education and get their guys here, get them on the machines, use them a little bit on the labor of the cleanup of some of the refurb machines, so that they're owning it, right? So that the customer knows that when we're done, their people are trained on the product too. So that's us in a nutshell there. Hope that answered your question, Mike.
More so. But I'm going to ask a very primary question that some people would appreciate. What do you touch in a manufacturing essence? Are you a software side, or is your work software programming related? Is it hardware, or is it interfacing between the two? Where do you get into?
That's an awesome question, because a controls engineer really is. If you went and said, "Hey, I want to be a controls engineer," and you went and got a college degree, what do you get? There isn't one, right? You're a mechanical engineer, and so you're touching a lot of that hardware, right? You're an electrical engineer, and so you're doing the power, but generally software, right? Because you're the programming guy that's doing that work. My background is electrical engineering technology, so I am an electrical engineer. I have the software, but I have been elbow deep into the machines, right? So I'm working with the guys that are pulling the wire. I don't pull the wire. But I'm working with the guys pulling the wire, setting that up, setting the transformers, making sure we got all the power and controls. So what do we do? What is JPiller Design and Consulting? We will take your automation and your design. You have to come to me with your process. I'm not a process engineer, right? So I'm not the chemical guy. I'm not those pieces. But you come to me with your process and you say, I need this many gallons heated up to this much temperature, make sure it keeps within this pressures, and I'll build that vessel that helps take care of that for you. I will then have the brains and the automation that maintains and controls that essence for you. And then we'll collect the data for you to help do low-level basic optimizations. And I say low-level, but what I mean by that is optimizations here in your building on how we can control and optimize and do that smart manufacturing piece with what we have, and prepare you for the future of when it's time to move it to the cloud and do some of that ML that people are talking about. They're out on the far cutting edge of tech. I'm going to have your building and your automation set ready to go into that spot. That's really the sweet spot I'm trying to do, Mike, is there's lots of guys out there that say, hey, I got a laptop and I can automate an Allen Bradley machine, right? I can do that for you. There's guys that'll say, I can go grab a machine and put some motors to it and move a conveyor belt and do that for you. That's cool. I can do that, and I am doing that. But really, I guess the secret sauce that I bring to the table that differentiates me is that my goal is not to worry about what you're going to do in 5 years, but get you set so that in 10, 15 years, you're already where you need to be, right? I'm using that futurist idea and with my thumb on the technology levels of what's going on in the industry right now, and pulling that in so that the little guys are going to be doing what those Fortune 500s are doing, right? That they're already on that line. They're already going into the ML. And it's not AI, but we can call it AI if you wish. They're doing that level. We don't need to be there, but we need to bring up the optimization of a 50-man shop, 100-man shop, so that they are ready to go. When it comes down from the people that they're supplying and says, oh, by the way, I need you to be able to, because we know that's coming. JPiller Design and Consulting will say, oh, no big deal. Let's check this box. Let's do this bit. Tell them you need to have this cost solved. And then boom, you're solving it. And in 6 months, you're up and going. Where if you didn't listen to those things, if you didn't do those things, you are now a year, 2 years, 3 years behind of where it needs to be. So that's the secret sauce, that when a client comes to me and wants to build in a machine, I'm already thinking towards that. I'm already building towards that space and getting that go for them.
So you answered my question really well. I now have to go back a step and just say, okay, somewhere along the line, maybe it was in your academic mindset when you're working in corporate world and watching state-of-the-art change and machine language being more prevalent in the last 10, 12 years or so. And then obviously now this AI is just an iteration of that, but and more buzz to it. But when did you decide that, hold it, it is worth me being an independent contractor trying to take a company from concept to execution and 5-year vision, because the last part they're not going to pay for.
No,
Because, yeah, but you at the same time you're trying to get a long-term gig rather than a one-time consulting gig. It sounds like.
right.
So when did
So
you come up with the idea that I can do this? I mean, you kind of gave me a timetable earlier, but has it been percolating for 5 years or what?
I'm going to say that it percolated while I was a professor. That was, I mean, that was ultimately my goal, right? I worked for a state institution, and as a state institution, our job is to try to make sure that the state is as advanced as it can be, right? That's
Hmm.
what our goal was. It states it in the mission statement of the university. So that was bred into me there. The other piece, like I said, I was born and bred here in the South Bend, Mishawaka area. Michiana, as a whole, has a lot of history in manufacturing. We go back to the late 1800s in manufacturing. We've had bust and booms all along the way. Right now, we've got a big potential of a boom with RVs, right? But we've been doing automotive, we've been doing RV, we've been doing bio, aeronautics. All of that is here in this space. Maybe it's not huge, big. We don't have a Boeing here, but we have lots of pieces that give solutions to Boeing, to SpaceX, and all these other places, right? Where that feeding area. And my great grandfather came here. This is my DNA is in the dirt here. So we've seen. I've go back in history, and you see the raise and the fall, and the raise and the fall, and the raise and the fall. So I guess part of that answer is, if I'm going to give you a machine, I want that machine to be able to last that long time. I think maybe to answer your question, I said once to you before, Studebaker was here, right? So Studebaker started as a blacksmith, and we all know that he had competition here in South Bend as other blacksmiths. We don't know that guy's name. We don't know his competition's name because his competition didn't put a motor on a wagon, right? Studebaker put a motor on a wagon, got it up and running, and was the fourth large, of the big four large automotive manufacturers into the 60s. Again, I don't know what's going to get anybody past the 2060s. I can't predict past that. But I have enough of a feeling and enough of a thought and enough information to get us into the 2040s and 50s. And then we got to go to that next step, right? That's somebody else's problem. I'm now an old man at that point. But yeah, so that ultimately, I guess, is really where it comes into play. I feel responsible if I'm going to give someone a product. I want it to last more than that year that they're hoping that it, ROIs on it. I need its ROI to go further.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, you're right. You're visionary at the same time reality checker. So that's the key. So good for you. So everyone listening in, check out the company in the link below in the description, and comment on your LinkedIn for him, and give us ideas what you think of the interview once you're all done. But some good information on his website. So with that thought in mind of trying to figure out impact, and we oftentimes seek the background. Share a story of someone who pushed or inspired you that you could do it and impact they had on that. So you mentioned a possible mentor in your current life. You want to talk about something about that? Or?
Yeah. So currently the business partner that I have going on, he has pushed well past where I thought I would ever be right now. To be frank, I anticipated that I was going to be in my basement for another 2 or 3 years, go ahead and doing some basic consulting, running some drawings, and making a decent living. But I am currently in a 4,000 square foot building, which I had no intention of being in. He kind of pushed me and said, "Hey, we got to go there." I wasn't sure if I could, and I did, and I'm making it. We're surviving, and it's shocking to me that we're here. We're even looking at maybe expanding because of some potential offers and potential customers that are coming down in the line where this 4,000 square feet isn't going to be enough room, right? So that was a huge push for me. It has pushed me out of my comfort zone, right? I spent 10 years out of my basement and garage, right? That was where we were doing this work. But it was a huge hit. His name is Ralph. Ralph has done an awesome job of mentoring me and challenging me along the way. So yeah, I really appreciate that from him.
Fantastic. That's so important that you are also, we'll talk about the fact that you have open ears when people talk. So good for you.
Yeah.
What's your biggest learning as a business owner? Now, business owner, different than a technician, different than an academic.
Yeah.
Business owner. Talk about
So
that.
um, there's new levels of challenges, right? So my DNA is engineer. So no matter what, that's where it is. So data matters. My gut doesn't, right? That's the way that goes. And we're making sure to know how and what data to look at, right? There's been pieces that have hit me here in the last 9 months that are, oh, really? That's how that works. Okay. For example, as silly as I need a bigger printer, right? I didn't even think about that, as a problem. Oh, I have to print labels, so now I need a label printer. Okay, cool. Let's get that. Where do you access pallets, right? I got to do shipping and receiving, right? So I've had to locate all of those businesses and make partnerships there. One of the biggest tools, Mike, honestly, was getting into the local chamber, the both counties that I've served,
Yeah.
And reaching out, and that is not an engineer thing, right? The engineer is, I like to say that, I'm the husband, the dad, the engineer, the teacher, right? Well, I also am, a Morlock, if you know what that is, and and I like to stay in the background, do the work, and don't mess with me. It's in the dark. I'm an introvert. Teaching, being a prof, made me have to go in front of the room, and I can pretend to be an extrovert for a little while, and it works, and that skill is valid, in this point. But man, that has been the hardest piece of just all those other functions that I didn't even think or worry about. I had to get a water bill, man. I grew up in the county, right? Now this building is in the city. And so I had to go down and figure out where the water bill is and all those other pieces and check all those boxes, get the internet running, have to build up my server and all those. I didn't have to worry about that before. I was in my basement, in my garage,
Yeah.
just growing, and those growing pains. And by the way, while doing that, I have to cover all the other things that I was covering, right? So now it's that point of, is it time? And is it time to hire someone? And then who do I hire, right? So this is really, really the big question that's laying on me. Is it time to hire someone, and who do I hire? Do I hire the technician? Do I hire the salesman? Do I hire the operations person? Which one? I can't hire all three, right? So which one do I do? And how do I make that next move? And that's a big question here too, Mike. So I guess those are the business questions that are floating in me. Because you say, hey, it's got to be a business owner, but it's still an engineer, and this is a whole system, and I have a right balance that controls algorithm, right? And that's where I'm at. And it turns out that there isn't actually 36 usable hours in a day in my own self, right? You have to actually multiplex and get somebody else in those man hours as opposed to actual measurable hours. So I hope that answered the question too.
Yeah. No. It sounds like what we oftentimes have is the opportunity to talk to companies that have been around, let's say 3 or 4, 5 years, who kind of get over that growing pains of a startup. And sometimes the startups are 10 years in the making, no question about it. And you've had a little of that background, but suddenly when you made a decision with your partner to jump into a 4,000 square foot building, you're right. That's a different mindset as well as the fact that you're working batch work now with clients and such. So that's fascinating. The human resource team building and how you make sure you hire the people. We're not just one and dones. How do you build a 1, 3, 5 year vision of where you want to be without any guarantee of any of it being real? But how do you extrapolate a possibility and A, B, C options, and those are all things that you'll be thinking about, I'm sure, in the near future here. So with that in mind, so if you were to ask you to pick 3 people in your business journey that you are most grateful for being there. Are there three people over the years that maybe you can point to and say, hey, these people got me to this point, or who they are and how they helped you? Because like you're saying, you have a 10-year birth of this company.
So obviously, and as silly as it sounds, obviously the partner, my wife, right? So she is there's no decision that doesn't also go through her, right? So she's on paper our CFO, in action she's our CFO, right? So the dollars are flowing through her and her mindset. So as you notice, I went down the list of people that I needed, and it wasn't an accountant, right? So we've got that piece. None of this would be working if it wasn't without her. And then there's I mentioned my client that I was at when the startup and I were working together. That was at a company, but the engineer that I worked with, the process engineer that I worked with at the place, his name is Kevin. Kevin has been on this journey with me a long time. There's been multiple times where he calls and says, hey, I need this project. And he's been there along this journey since 2018, right? So he wasn't in the beginning, but he was absolutely there. And he's still there, right? I've got another project on the books waiting, for him to say, go and hit it along the way. Kevin has coached along the way too. He's got his own company that he's doing consulting for process control and extrusion. And every time he needs an automation, I'm his call. So that's a big deal. Obviously, Ralph is a big hit. There's a lot of mentoring and learning from him. And I do got to say that most of my contracting experience came from my internships. Okay. Yeah. And as long ago as that is, I interned under a gentleman named Otto Taylor. And I don't talk to Otto much anymore because time has, moved us across. But Otto taught me a great deal of what does it mean to figure out what the project is and estimate it. Now, I was focusing on electrical projects at the time, but still, what do you got to put into that? How do you got to put a percentage on it? When you got to put a guess, how do you guess it? And then he moved me to my first job down in Houston, Texas. And there was a gentleman that I worked under there, and his name was Frank Didone. Again, great mentor. Frank helped me understand how to take what I learned from estimating jobs in Little South Bend to estimating the exact same kind of jobs, but in scale in Houston, Texas. And I mean, seriously, my first job that I quoted with Ralph or with Frank down there was the George R. Convention Center. I did not win that one, but I won the hotel attached to it. So that's amazing, to be able to walk through and understand how do I quote that? How do I make that happen? And then manage it through and write the contract and put the bid together. And so, it went from, a $10,000 project that a kid was doing here over the summer with Otto to a $13.8 million project in Houston, right? So those were huge mentors for me along the way. There's a few profs I'd love to call out there too, along the way too. But, those were the business people that helped me move probably where I am. I mean, my spreadsheet that I use to do quick quotes is absolutely, I can see Otto and Frank in those, right? So,
that's cool.
Those were big.
Yeah, you got it, because it leads to my next couple of questions about the future here. So as you think about the next 1 to 3 years, what's your number one point of growth and challenge you want to achieve with your goals?
I really want, so again, I'm not quite well tuned into the right business frame numbers and manage of those words, right? So I'm thinking about it in project, right? So I'm still there. I would like very much to have 5 substantial projects that are automation and controls in a year, each year, and a growth of 2 on that each year for the next 5 years. And then along with that, I'm looking for taking this line that I have right now that's doing packaging, advance it. I'm working on making it a more automated system and advancing it and keeping it up and running for, instead of only a 1 month period, I would like it running for 6 to 8 months out of the year, doing product, of whether it's client product or maybe some product that I have, some fill time that I can sell some of our own kind of a deal, as a generic product. But those are kind of the goals that I have for the company as I've been fleshing it out here towards year end. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Again, that's the kind of thinking we're talking about, is plan it out, but you have no clue if it's going to happen, but at least you have a destination in mind, saying,
Sure.
the old adage of getting the, go to Mars, but get at least to the moon in the step. Kind of a couple of final things here. Jim Rome is a business coach legend in our industry. He passed away a year or two ago, and he had a quote that we really resonate in our world. It says, "We become the average of 5 people we spend the most time with." As you think about this, what advice do you have for business owners who are trying to do it on their own? Again, because you're coming away from that mindset.
Yeah. First of all, it is difficult. Okay. This coming at it at my own. I don't know that this is the best path. It is absolutely going through the mountain, not going around it, not going over it. I am going through the mountain right now. So the 5 people I'm surrounded with, it's all family. This has been a family business. This summer, my son has been doing much of my counting and accounting and shipping on what was parts going out. So he's been in there. Again, I said my wife, she's helping me grow and manage and make sure that we're doing positive work, not just work for no good reason. And Ralph is here, showing me some of his mindsets and ropes. But I will say myself, as if I'm the lone wolf, as you kind of said there, I am a piece of. There's a little bit of Otto, there's a little bit of Frank, Kevin's in there. I've got professors that are in there, Mike Jacob and Tim Squarnina is in there a little bit too. So they're all a growth of a piece of me. My father is a huge piece of me. He's the original JPiller, right? He actually he carved this logo the first time in one of his workbenches, and so I stole that from him. But he's got wins and losses in his time too that are sitting on me. I'm not doing it on my own. I am standing on the backs of giants. I just don't have maybe a lot of people around the circle at this point in time. But there's absolutely more than 5 that are pushing me up that hill.
Okay.
So
yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to what we're saying here, is that, John, it sounds like you've been really blessed with some incredible people that you've had help you on this journey so far. What would you like to say to them?
Thank you. When I don't have faith in myself, there's people that listen. They may not understand, and there's times where I'm like, I'm not going to explain it to you because you don't know a Fourier transform, and I can't explain it to you because you don't have 10 years worth of education on that. But trust me, it sucks and it's not great right now, and they're there just to listen, right? That is, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Having someone to lean on is a big deal. There was a point in my life that I didn't think I had those people to lean on. I was back in graduate school, and it was hard. And I got kicked in the pants really, really badly during that time period. And it allowed me to realize who was there, because people did come and pick me up when I fell. And I appreciate it, and they're still all there. There's a reason why we moved back home, because there is support in this location. So, yeah, appreciate them.
Oh, fantastic. So John, kind of in wrap up, it's really been a pleasure speaking with you today. So thank you for being on our show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the call. We bounced around a little bit, and I appreciate continuing and making this conversation happen. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Take care.
All right. Have a good one.